Joining us today is Dr. Candice Kendall. She was co-founder of Kendall International in 1981, and she grew her small consulting business into one of the largest global contract research organizations with thousands of associates on 5 continents. Since retiring in 2011, she has been creating a new parenting standard to read aloud at least 15 minutes with children every day. She envisions a world in which reading aloud is just like brushing our teeth or putting on a seatbelt, automatic everyday habits for families. Through Dr. Kendall's Read Aloud 15 Minutes campaign, she's working to ensure that children are in a better position for success in school and life. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Kendall. So go ahead and say hello, and then we'll do some polls here.
Well, thank you, Doug, and welcome everyone. And we're thrilled to be having this webinar with McGraw-Hill Education, who is
thank you very much.
Read Aloud 15 Minutes campaign. Thank you, Doug.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So before we go into your presentation, Dr. Kendall, we're going to do a couple polls for the audience. The first one, everyone, is just a poll about your job function so we can kind of know who's with us today. So here it goes. All right, it looks like we've got the majority of you voted here. We'll share those results with everyone so you can kind of see who's on the line with us. We have 50% of you are elementary school teachers, a few administrators, daycare professionals, and corporate employees on. And then the other bucket was very popular with 33%. So yeah, if those folks, if you guys want to type your job function into the question box, that'd be great, and we can kind of get the other variety of folks who are joining us. And thanks for being on the webinar today. So our next poll, to kick off the topic today, just wanted to get your opinion on approximately what percentage of U.S. children are considered ready for kindergarten education by age 5. So give us your thoughts on that, please. All right, it looks like we're just about everybody voted here. While I share those results, a couple other job functions. We've got some early childhood teachers, some literacy specialists, nonprofit representatives, reading specialists, associate producer, account executives, so some of the other job functions that are being represented here for you, Dr. Kendall. And let me share the results here with everybody of this poll. So it looks like we had 2% of you said 80%, 13% said 70%, 22% said 60%, and then 62% of you, so most of you think less than 60%. So those are the results of that. And I think Dr. Kendall will have some points to talk about there.
Thank you. Maybe we should get started. Just talking about the poll for a minute, the number is about 60% of children are ready for kindergarten. It certainly varies across the nation and varies by state. So I think probably many of us are right at the appropriate number. Doug, I need a little help here with the moving the screen.
Should be, okay, let's try. All right.
There we go. Well, welcome to the discussion about Read Aloud 15 Minutes, early childhood, and the national campaign. And we're going to have a little technical difficulty here.
There we go.
So let's talk a minute about, there I've got it, I think.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Read Aloud 15 Minutes as a nonprofit organization our efforts to work with McGraw-Hill Education and others to make reading aloud every day for at least 15 minutes the new standard in childcare, beginning from birth throughout our lives. The data are very clear that when every child is read aloud to for 15 minutes every day from birth, more children will be ready to learn when they enter kindergarten, and many children will have the literacy skills that they need to succeed in school, and that, of course, will have many more productive citizens. The collaboration with McGraw-Hill Education is an obvious one. You know of their legacy and expertise in literacy development. You know their presence in pre-K through 12 in our schools. And, of course, you know about their many innovative reading products. Maybe what you don't know is why someone like myself, who had a career in higher education and as an entrepreneur and later as a global business leader, why I do this. I share this just to let you know that we are one of America's fortunate step-up families. This is my grandparents in eastern Kentucky in the coal mines in 1919, where my grandfather was illiterate. My grandmother could read, and these are 8 of their 9 children. They walked out of the coal mines of eastern Kentucky to an Appalachian community outside of Cincinnati. So we are truly grateful for the opportunities that we have had as one of America's step-up families. So this is our chance as a family to give back. And we have as a goal that every child be kindergarten ready by engaging parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, siblings, neighbors, friends, anyone who can lend a hand in reading aloud to our children every day from birth. So a simple idea, but one which all of the research says could be very powerful. It was helpful to know that we have about 50% of the audience in elementary education, many more of you in reading and preschool, daycare kinds of environments. So some of these facts might be well known to you. I share them with you because these have been aha moments. We've been in the campaign for just about a year now. We spend a lot of time talking to business leaders, community leaders, educators, and so forth. And we know that America does not know the importance of reading aloud 15 minutes beginning at birth. So we thought we would share with you 6 points that that you could share with families, neighbors, and friends of children. We always start with, for the first time in America's history, that children will be less well educated than their parents. Sad but true. We also know that while 20% of children exceed kindergarten readiness, and of course that's wonderful, but 37 to 40% of children really are underprepared, and this sets them up for struggles throughout school, which many of you know. We'll talk about how to present these facts to parents, but many of you have firsthand experience with these statistics with the children in your classroom, and you know that a poor first grade reader has an 88% probability of being a poor fourth grade reader. So some very difficult challenges as kids work through elementary years if they come to kindergarten ill-prepared. There is an economic difference in kindergarten readiness. Children of affluence are read to about 1,000 hours on average between birth and age 5, while children of low-income families are read to about 25 hours before kindergarten. So we have to be aware of the income consequences for our children. And we'll talk a little bit more about, hopefully, a Q&A session. A powerful statistic I think that Americans do not know about is that 19% of U.S. high school students graduate without basic reading proficiency. And as a business leader, this has a huge impact on our labor pool and our nation's productivity. 65% of students who don't read proficiently by the end of the 4th grade will end up in jail or on welfare. Again, consequence for all of our citizens. So continuing a little bit on the theme of what Americans don't know, let's talk about brain development and learning from birth to age 5. These are really important things to communicate to our families and community. The second thing we'll talk about is a little bit of TV versus reading and what are the real issues there. And then the separation between home and school and how it's hurting a nation's young people. And again, so many of you know this firsthand. A very simple way to communicate what happens to our brain is that 85% of our brain development occurs by the age of 4. And what you see on the left of your screen are the brain scans of 2 3-year-old children. The brain scan of the child on the left lights up, is fully connected. Neuronal pathways are set for future learning. And this is a child who's been read to, talked to, really has experienced the cognitive triad of reading, talking, and writing. And unfortunately, the child on the right is a child who has not had an enriched environment. And if you share this brain scan with families, it really has, again, an aha moment for people aware of reading from birth. Just a minute, we don't talk a lot about policy, but I think it's important to point out that on the right-hand side, the graph talks about in this country, which, by the way, is very different than in other countries, where we put our nation's funding, the light blue line that rises dramatically and then plateaus to the right, versus how the light blue line is the brain growth, which occurs rapidly and then plateaus over life. And in this country, how our funding, the dark blue line, really is very slow in the first 6 years of life and then escalates actually on out past secondary education. And as you know, this has been much in the news. Our legislators and leaders are talking about the importance of funding in the pre-K years. So again, not to dwell too much on policy, but it is actually not matched well with brain development. So let's talk a little bit about TV and reading. And as you know, several years ago, there was a lot of conversation about Big Bird and Big Bird's funding. I had the privilege of being in Chapel Hill, North Carolina in the late 70s when what was then called the Children's Television Workshop, now think of it as Sesame Street, we were experimenting with television and learning in early childhood. We were keen to have children in the preschool years watch educational television with an effort to increase vocabulary in ages 3 to 5. And what we found was that while we increased vocabulary in the very early years in low-income children by about 3,500 words, that in children in middle and upper-income households, we increased vocabulary by 35,000 words. And it was a real awakening for researchers in public health there at the University of North Carolina School of Public. And what we determined was that that TV watching, when it is done the solitary effort, so a child sitting in front of a TV, can make a difference. And again, I'm not talking about kids under 2. We can talk about that in a second. But children 2 to age 5 in this study. The real impact is when you have multidimensional learning. When a mom, dad, caregiver, grandparent is watching the TV and coaching in the same way that they would with a book, you get much more learning and much more brain stimulation, neuronal stimulation. So the message here is whether you're reading or watching TV, make it a multidimensional effort and include the cognitive triad of reading, talking, and later writing or coloring or drawing as you work through books or even television. Parents who read aloud for even 15 minutes a day also provide what we think of as a continuum of learning. A child knows to whom they should go when they have a question. They know who the expert is in their parents. So they have the parent as the first and most important teacher example. School begins at home and at birth. This is an issue for us as a country, as brawn jobs have all but disappeared, and there really are only brain jobs. Today, there are 600,000 jobs in this country that are going unfilled because we have a mismatch between our skill sets in this country. And we need to think of ourselves as a nation of brain jobs. It's really important that our educated beginning at birth, at home, and that our parents learn to understand the lifelong commitment to learning, both for their children and for themselves, and that they're engaged. I'm very familiar with UPS, for example, and today almost all UPS package car drivers use SmartPad and are college graduates. Our mechanics, of course, are computer experts. They're no longer brawn jobs, but essentially brain jobs in our curriculum. In our country, I think we have a tendency to perhaps be critical of curriculum that's moved down the chain, but I think a really wonderful example is Finland has risen in the international PISA ratings. Their fifth graders are doing very sophisticated math, and when you ask in this country why our children are not doing sophisticated math in the fifth grade, the biggest hurdle for them is word problems and the challenges that they have with reading. So the world is moving more quickly, and the curriculum is moving down the education chain, and we have to help our parents and our leadership understand that in order to be competitive, our education will have to follow. Summer slide is always a difficult issue in our school year, a difficult topic, and again, we don't get into the policy issues at Read Aloud 15 minutes, but we are very, very aware of the fact that you can lose a half a year every year in the summer months if the child is not engaged in educational efforts throughout the summer, and it begins with reading aloud every day. It's not a vacation from reading. It's reading aloud from birth, 15 minutes every day. And then finally, all of you know the unintended consequences of mandated promotion for many of our children. Students who can't read on grade level, as you well know, almost always struggle to perform in other subjects. The example we just talked about was mathematics. And for poor readers, the achievement gap obviously widens with each passing grade. So our parents need to understand that reading aloud from birth isn't something that we stop at kindergarten. Reading aloud and participating, engaging in the education of their children is absolutely essential throughout their life. And finally, again, an obvious point for all the educators on the call, that students who don't experience early academic success more likely to experience emotional or behavioral issues, not only in the school setting, but really throughout their life. So I think what I was trying to do here was sort of lay the foundation for why a national campaign is so very, very important. There's so many tens, if not hundreds of thousands of groups trying to work on this problem, and you know, why is it so difficult? Why are we having such a hard time overcoming this problem? And we believe that a national campaign is essential for stemming the national crisis in early childhood education. We've illustrated for you here the first and most successful campaign in America's public health history, and that is Look Mom, No Cavities. The truth is, for those of us who are old enough to know, that used to say Look Ma, No Cavities. And it was an effort between the American Dental Association, Procter & Gamble, Crest, and it was at the close of World War II when the men came home from World War II with the best dental health because military had introduced toothbrushing with baking soda in order to keep the men in the field. And so an American campaign to improve everyone's dental health took part, and in particular, were very proud when their child came home from school, because frequently the exams were done in low-income neighborhoods in the schools. Look, Mom, no cavities. So that's the oldest public health campaign that has been nationally so successful, and today we, of course, enjoy the world's finest dental health. And then I think there's little that has to be said about the campaign on the right, started by Evelyn Lauder almost 25 years ago, and certainly steam built by the Komen Foundation, Nancy Brinker on behalf of her sister Susan, and everyone in the world, certainly in our country, but possibly in the world, knows the significance of the pink ribbon. The importance here of these two campaigns, and we're going to talk a little bit about other campaigns that have been successful, is that the Economic Policy Institute in 2002 and several times since has really demonstrated that in order to change a behavioral norm in one group, we as a society really have to be aligned. We won't be successful by pointing over there and saying, well, you need to shape up, you need to do better. For the same reason that the NFL has pink ribbons, and there are pink ribbons on cereal boxes, and there are pink ribbons as men and women walk for breast cancer research, we will have to join as a nation if we intend to improve early childhood education. In getting the Read Aloud 15 Minutes national campaign organized, we did study the campaigns that worked and the campaigns that didn't work. I've already mentioned the American Dental Health Campaign of 1956. Again, across multiple segments, the American Dental Association, Procter & Gamble Crest, Indiana University. Some of you may remember the 1970s anti-smoking campaign that was a collaboration between the U.S. government, the tobacco industry, lots of celebrities and health professionals, and until very recently had smoking on the decline. But campaigns have to have very long legs in order to change society. I'm sure most of you are familiar with the MAD campaign. Candy Lightner, mother who lost her child at the hands of a drunk driver, was enlisted the support of Elizabeth Dole, Ronald Reagan, Bill Clinton, and essentially abolished the one-for-the-road mentality. You may or may not remember, but I remember in college that there was just a regular occurrence of grab one before you went out the door, and what insanity that really was as young college students, and how important the MAD campaign has been in creating safety by significantly reducing drunk driving on our roads since 1980. And then finally, again, the Pink Ribbon Campaign for Breast Cancer Prevention and Research. Again, Evelyn Lauder with fashion editors and publishers in New York, and later Nancy Brinker on behalf of Susan Komen, and we all know the wonderful success of that campaign. And what we're asking for you to do is to help make Read Aloud 15 Minutes, that little logo up on the left, and the Read Aloud 15 Minutes, Every Child, Every Parent, Every Day slogan, as readily recognized as the Pink Ribbon Campaign is today. What do these campaigns have in common? What is it why is it we think that we can be successful? The very first thing that a campaign needs to do is to have a nation that's ready. We think the nation is ready. We think that across our country, people are beginning to feel the heartache of a less well-educated population, the less readily available skill sets to have a productive nation. And certainly in Washington, for the first time, we've had the last two administrations of the executive branch talking about what are we going to do about getting children ready. And now I think one of the things that our congressional leaders are in agreement on is that we have to address, we absolutely must address the education crisis in our country. And we must have passionate leadership across the cross-section of influencers. You as educators and your leaders, business leaders, our national leadership, and essentially our academic leadership, we have to come together at a national level and a local level in every community and say, this means something for each of us if we want to live in a productive society. And then we have to say, well, what is it that we really want? We think a campaign strategy with meaningful milestones starts with having at least 250 million Americans by 2022 understanding that reading aloud 15 minutes every child, every parent, every day, and logo, place to start. The peeling back the onion milestone, of course, is that every child is kindergarten ready. So when everybody in this country understands the importance of reading aloud 15 minutes, and when every child is kindergarten ready, I think we will say we have had a successful campaign. We do know that a clear and concise visual message, so parent and child with a book, and read aloud 15 minutes, is easy for everyone to understand. So we needed a national readiness. I think we have that. We need passionate leadership across all of the influencers in our society. I'll show you how we're making progress there. We need to have a campaign strategy with meaningful milestones, so 250 million Americans understanding the message, and then a clear and understandable message. So we want every child kindergarten ready. But then along the way, we think it's really important to evaluate the child reading at third grade level on time, as that's a frequently used indicator of high school success. We also think parent engagement and understanding the importance of reading aloud is important. This has to be every parent knowing that this is part of their responsibility, whether they live in the home or they don't live in the home. I am responsible for my child being read to every day beginning at birth for 15 minutes. And I, as a citizen, understand the positive economic outcomes that come from a literate and articulate citizenship. So it's really a straightforward message. I am a parent and responsible, and I am a citizen who will benefit when every parent is responsible. So let's get to the nuts and bolts of how you get this done. How do we have every citizen understanding that reading aloud 15 minutes, every child, every parent, every day? Well, certainly we work at it every day, all year long. But we ask our partners at local, regional, and national levels to get fully engaged during 3 months of the year. And we're coming up on March Read Aloud Month. And so I'm so glad to be talking to you this week because the big month in March, many of you, particularly the educators, know about NEA Read Across America on March 3rd, so that kicks that off. During the month, there is International Book Day. So again, another opportunity to celebrate. And we'll be sharing with you materials that you can share with your school, your community, your family, your students about Read Aloud 15 minutes, every child, every parent, every day. So March is a big month, time to really get busy here and get the message out. We then have a midsummer campaign pulse called Seize the Summer, and this, for little ones, addresses the importance of reading all summer long, and also addresses for children who are somewhat older the issue around summer slide. Then finally in October we have what's called Let's Talk, and you might think of that as the old parent-teacher conference, but again, think about children from birth to 5. We want parents and daycare providers, grandparents, preschool teachers, and elementary school teachers talking about the importance of reading aloud year-round during their parent-teacher conferences, or for that matter, just as they drop kids off to school. Did you get a chance to read? Did you share a weekly reading calendar? At any rate, to have professionals and families talking about the importance of reading aloud and that reinforcement comes in October. And again, the campaign will run through 2022. What does the messaging look like? If you can become a partner at readaloud.org, and we share messages with all of our partners, 30 messages in English and in Spanish. And one of our partners, for example, the Home Depot is a national partner, but we also have many, many local and regional partners, which I'll again mention later. The Home Depot generously posts the messages on the TVs in the warehouses for all of their workers at Home Depot, most of whom must be parents, grandparents, neighbors, or friends, right? So their employee base sees the Read Aloud 15 Minutes message each month throughout the campaign pulse. Reach Out and Read shares our messages in the pediatricians' offices and all of their partners. So Chubb Insurance has recently joined us as a national partner. So you can, so all of our partners share these messages widely in different ways throughout the campaign pulses of March, July, and October. We currently have 700 organizations nationwide who are partners, and we're growing rapidly. We're able to reach maternity wards and hospitals, pediatricians' offices, daycare centers, libraries are big partners, boys clubs, girls clubs, literacy groups. We have faith-based groups, lots and lots of local businesses and regional businesses. I'll give you an example of a large academic institution. For example, SUNY of New York shares the messages across 42 campuses and their partners. And essentially we use, again, local, regional, and national partners to share the Read Aloud 15 Minutes. Anyone who will listen, anyone who will participate. We have 250 million Americans we need to touch by 2022. We are looking to expanding our reach. We're asking each of our partners to reach out and invite others to join. So if you're a school, we hope all the other schools in your district will join. If you're a boys club, we're hoping that you'll reach out to other boys and girls clubs, or perhaps send a national message to your organization about our simple and powerful message. Most importantly, we really need to have every parent informed and understanding the importance of beginning from birth, reading aloud 15 minutes. And I want to stop here for a second and say, that does not mean, as you know, as educators, capturing this child, making them sit down and read. The reading can be, it should be fun, engaging, playful. It can be at home, it can be on the playground, it can be the soccer coach, it can be in the grocery store. It's essentially using every opportunity to read, talk, and engage children from birth. Stimulate those neurons. We say grow brains, grow, to prepare children for kindergarten and for lifelong learning. So to the educators on the call, people say, well, really, what do you want us to do? Well, here it's really straightforward, not hard. Superintendents, we'd like to get every school in your district to sign up as a partner and distribute the message to within your schools and with every parent in each of the months, March, July, and October. For principals to work with the teachers who are frequently already doing lots and lots of reading campaigns. Maybe they're working on a local reading program. In Cincinnati, Ohio, for example, there's a widespread effort called Read On. They are a national partner with us for Read Aloud 15 Minutes. So, I mean, I engage already existing reading programs in the Read Aloud 15 Minutes national message, and to encourage your PTAs or your PTOs to promote the campaign messages. For teachers, campaign messages and resources are available, and we'll talk about how you can get those, whether they're reading calendars, whether they're reading tips, whether they're stickers that you can put on students' folders, essentially getting right down in the kitchen those families to encourage them to read aloud at home every day. And then finally, with staff, to make sure that the messaging is present throughout the school, not just in the library, but in every place where students congregate and can carry the message home to parents, grandparents, and others. Excuse me. Well, first of all, we again need to thank McGraw-Hill not only for today, but they have really committed to helping, and Doug is going to talk about this at the end. But they're going to post resources, 5 steps to become a Read Aloud 15-minute parent, and they're going to offer to each of you free iTunes e-reader apps through March, and Doug will talk about that. We can't thank them enough for helping with the campaign. They are helping us promote through social and corporate communications, and really joining with Read Aloud 15 Minutes to deliver this webinar and other educational messaging. I just want to thank McGraw-Hill Education for all they've done, being supportive of the campaign. I've already talked about how you can share the message. If you become a partner, there is a partner toolkit which we will share with you in addition to the messages to make it as easy as possible. By the way, it's free. I mean, this is just get on the website, join, share, and we will follow up with you on how to get you engaged. And also by subscribing to the campaign newsletter and sharing the newsletter with colleagues and friends across the country. Before we close, I do want to thank our national leadership partners and the 700 other partners, the American Library Association, the United Way, the Library of Congress Center for the Book, Academy of Pediatrics, Reach Out and Read, First Book, which many of you know does such a wonderful job in providing books to Title I schools and other NGOs for children with need. KPMG, UPS, America's Promise Alliance out of Washington, SUNY, Home Depot, Chubb, and the campaign for grade level reading. So wonderful national partners, and we're growing national partners every day. How will we know it's working when I no longer have to explain, or our team no longer has to explain the importance of reading aloud 15 minutes, and that every parent recognizes the symbol Read Aloud 15 minutes, every child, every parent, every day. Thank you again for letting me talk to you about the importance of the national campaign, and a special thanks to all the teachers on the call for what you do for our children. It's so very important. Doug?
Thank you, Dr. Kendall. That was fantastic. Just want to echo what you said. Yes, thank you for everybody for joining, and obviously thank you to all the educators who are on the webinar today. We're thrilled to have been able to co-present this with Read Aloud 15-minute. Obviously, reading is a core part of what we do here at McGraw-Hill Education, so we're very excited to be working with you, Dr. Kendall. So a couple questions people have been asking about how can they get the apps and how can they get the copy of the presentation. We are going to be, and while I'm speaking about this, if you have contact questions or questions about how to get started, or some detailed questions for Dr. Kendall, please type those in now, and we'll be taking questions for her. So go ahead and do that right away. So we're going to be sending out a follow-up email to everybody with a link to the resources. I also chatted that out in the chat box. You can click and go there immediately. The PDF is posted with the e-reader apps that are available on iTunes and on Google Play. So you're able to download those for your tablet devices, and they're really great. They're obviously some of your favorite stories, like Little Red Hen and Country Mouse and City Mouse, and a few others like that. So you'll be getting a copy of that in your email, as well as a link to the recording of the presentation today. So if you want to share that with anyone that couldn't join us, or anyone that wasn't aware, feel free to do that. So let me see if we've got any questions for you so far. A couple of comments from Rebecca about it was hard to believe that in today's information age that today's children will be less well-educated than their parents, and I have to say that that's very shocking. So I don't know if you want to expound on that anymore, Dr. Kendall, while I'm looking for more questions. But
I think this actually speaks to employable skill sets and to actual reading level. I think we tend to think about technology and telephones, but in terms of actual abilities to be an effective citizen, things like mathematics and science require a high degree of reading proficiency and then the subsequent math and science skills. So no matter how well you can use your phone, you probably will struggle with technical manuals that are required to repair a car. I'll just give you one example. About 4 years ago, I was in Heinz ketchup factory in northern Ohio, and over the years, as you know, the manufacturing jobs have left this country, although I'm optimistic that we can bring a different kind of manufacturing job back to this country. But manufacturing jobs today require an understanding of technical manuals that enable us to use sophisticated robotics and sophisticated safety determinations about, in this case, the food that we eat, the kinds of materials that we use in our bottles and our caps and the filling. And I mean, I was just overwhelmed by the knowledge of the manufacturing worker in America today, in this case, in our food industry. So again, it's reading, understanding technology, employing that knowledge to make safe decisions around our food supply. So I think that's what it means when the comment is we will be less well educated to execute more sophisticated tasks for our nation going forward.
thank you very much for that. I've got a question from Carla here. Is there data that supports reading aloud after kindergarten to close the achievement gap? So much seems to be determined by age 3. I'm asking as a parent and a first-grade teacher, she said.
Carla, that's a great question, and I'll start by saying that it is always heartbreaking when we do a presentation such as this one and the parent comes up to you and says, is it too late for my 5-year-old? Is it too late? Well, the truth of the matter is that the brain is a very efficient machine. You cannot, after those development times, think back again to the brain scan. You can't create those same neuronal complexes, the more efficient place for laying down the framework for executing knowledge schema. But the brain is very efficient in working around. And so if a child is not read to before the age of 4 and we dig our heels in and we do the work, we can help a child catch up. But there is no doubt about it. It is not the same. It is not the same. The brain will process things differently, but can that child be successful? Absolutely. It's just a whole lot more work for the child and the teacher and the parent. And we are actually in the March campaign. One of the chapters in the March campaign is entitled, If You Wait, It's Too Late. And the point there is you have this, I'll just give you a little layman science here. We're all born with about 4,000 brain cells, nerves, and we lose half of them by the time we're 4. And that's the normal process. We essentially shed what we don't use. It's no different than doing exercise with our muscles. If you use it or lose it kind of thing. So what you're trying to do in those first 4 years is employ those neurons and connect them and make efficient pathways for learning. So yes, yes, it can be done, but it is so very much harder than if you start reading from birth.
Thank you. Another question from Paige about the presentation. Did the statistics of 1,000 hours versus 25 hours of Read Aloud before grade K include home and preschool? What's her question?
That work was done by Susan Newman. Dr. Newman is currently at the University of Michigan. She was formerly an Undersecretary of Education in the Clinton administration. In a paper that it's a review paper that you might be interested in. It's actually a chapter later in a book called Knowledge Gap. The chapter is called Knowledge Gap. So if you're interested in the real details and the methodology of the research, but that was at-home hours. That was parent engagement. But it's a wonderful paper. Not overly scientific, easy enough to read and to share among your colleagues. The Newman Knowledge Gap, if you Google it, you'll get right there.
So getting a couple questions about working with parents and convincing parents of the importance of reading aloud and some support to help encourage them. I know you've got a lot of great resources on your website for sure that would help out with that. But any other tips that you might want to share, not only from the educator side, but from the parent side? We're getting both of those kinds of questions. So maybe you could talk a little about that.
Sure. First of all, let me just foreshadow the March campaign pulse, where working with First Book, Jennifer Bryan of Read Aloud 15 Minutes has put together 15 tips and recommended books. So those will be available that you can actually dole out to parents in a night during March. But I think our experience is the first thing is that parents, recognizing that parents don't know. That's number one. They don't know. I was amazed. I thought parents knew. They don't know. So that's number one. The second thing is to alleviate any fear about what you mean by reading aloud. And as all of you know, some of the very best picture books don't have words at all. So the idea about reading aloud is to expose the child to as many words as possible. And because we all have reading habits, a book facilitates the use of new words, new sentence structures. So you expand the child's vocabulary away from what you might ordinarily use in your home or in communication. So a book puts words in front of you and in front of you as a parent and you and your child. So the first thing is don't worry about prepositions and conjunctions. If you are yourself as a parent struggle as a reader, do what we call dialogic reading. Many of you know this term. It's picture reading. Don't worry about the words. Just get the book out and begin by reading the pictures and do the best job you can with the words. The second thing, of course, is when you start reading with the tiny little ones, it's challenging. It's boring. The baby is just not interacting. One of the recently award-winning Disney authors said his mother read romance novels to him. But the point is, read and just keep reading. And with a little one, once they're 6 months old or so and can handle a book, let them chew on the book. And I once had someone say, well, that people gave them these cheap books from the dollar store. It doesn't matter. It just really doesn't matter. The thing to encourage parents is just sit down and read and engage, and as the child gets older, point to the pictures, let the child hold the book. You all know all this. We need to relieve them from the I have to do this right. And I think the 15 tips that Jen Bryan has put together really are right on target with regard to give yourself as a break as a parent. Lighten up, enjoy the book, enjoy the child, embrace the child, and essentially make reading a time of fun for you, either your child, your grandchild, the neighbor's child. I mean, a single mom living next door to you is an opportunity for you to read to that child if you are, have that kind of time, sitting on the stoop reading to the child. So I guess what I would say is the best thing is to take the pressure off. This is not sit still, be quiet, and listen to me read. This is embrace the fun, read, talk, point to the pictures, share the book, any book.
Fantastic. That kind of answers part of our next question, which may be our final question here from Rachel. In her question, she's stating that she's a teacher as well as she has a 2.5-year-old, and she was asking for some tips on, what to do during the reading, and should they be asking questions or having the daughter draw items from the stories they read together, and is there the best time of day to read aloud together? So you answered a little of that, but maybe there's some more to draw out there if you'd like to respond.
First of all, Rachel, lucky you. What's fun with a 2.5-year-old? I look at this as there are no rules. You'll find some children, I think, at about that age who they want their own book. So pick up another book and read a different book. It's really whatever your child do. I know is maybe you have a child who's more active and can play with toys or Legos or blocks or the kitchen pots and pans. We don't have to have fancy toys here. Just read. There's another child who wants to crawl up on your lap and turn the pages and, can tell you the colors and, is engaged in the reading. Again, it's no rules reading. It's just expand their vocabulary, let them ask questions. There is no interrupting in Read Aloud. There's only reading, talking, and then as they get a little older, putting a crayon in their hand and their idea of what's on the page. But it really is engaging with vocabulary and what's on the book. So you have tons of fun ahead of you, Rachel.
Thank you. Yeah, that should be a challenge for her. But a fun one.
Don't envy here.
Yeah. So that's all the questions we have. Again, we're going to send a follow-up email out to everybody, and thank you so much again for joining us. You'll get a copy of, or you'll get a link to the recording of this presentation. You will get a link to the Read Aloud website with our flyer and, of course, their resources. So thank you, Dr. Kendall, for your time and for partnering with us. It was a pleasure having you on a webinar with us. And sharing your insights was great. We look forward to possibly a future session as well. And thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.